This is Metabolic Mastery, a core medical technologies podcast dedicated to advancing knowledge and practice in metabolic testing. Welcome to Metabolic Mastery, brought to you by Core Medical Technologies. I'm Dr. Marc Humbert. This is my co-host, Dr. Garber. And today we're going to be talking about training for health and longevity. It's a buzzy topic right now.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, I want to kind of outline it with some of the areas of health, let's call it, that we should consider when we're looking at our training. Because our training isn't just about our training, right? It's not just about the workouts we're doing. It's also everything that surrounds that. And so some of those other lifestyle factors. And so considering things like my sleep habits, my activity habits, and that's just general movement and dedicated exercise. That's things like, how do I manage stress? How's my nutrition? All of those things play into our longevity. And so they're all things that we want to consider looking at when we're considering our training regime by and large. And when we're looking at how do I stay healthy and live well and feel good, not just now, but over the course of decades. And so to dive into that, we want to talk about the types of things that we're tracking and this idea of goal metrics versus process metrics and how focusing on them in appropriate ways can help us to have moments that matter, right? The big wins in life.
Yeah.
So Cameron, dive into this difference between goal metrics and process metrics.
Yeah. So the idea is we often set ourselves little goals of I want to lose weight, or I want to train for a race, or I want to XYZ, whatever it is, climb Everest or whatever. And so we often will have certain metrics in mind for getting to that goal, certain pace metrics, certain weight on the scale metrics, race times, or whatever. We tend to have these metrics of have I achieved my goal type metrics. And the problem with tracking those things is we often can get discouraged if we're not quite where we want to be. Versus process metrics, the idea there is they're numbers that we look at that help guide the journey of, am I on track to be able to hit those goal metrics? And so I think there's a key differentiation there in what are the numbers I'm looking at on a day-to-day basis to make sure I'm headed in the right direction, versus the goal metrics are more, have I arrived at what I want to hit? And so, Mark and I, when we're talking longevity, we often talk with our patients about building a 30-year plan for their health instead of just a right now plan. And so let's talk about, the big picture, the 30,000-foot view and a 30-year plan. And so that idea of building this longer term outlook with a greater purpose in mind, so that we can make sure that nothing that we're doing in the short term is sabotaging the long-term goal. And that's why we incorporate VO2 testing into everything that we're doing. So the resting metabolic rate, as well as the exercise testing, is that helps us to really get some of those important process metrics going on, some of the metrics that help lead us to where we want to go, and not just the have I arrived metrics. So VO2 max, for example, is more of a have I arrived metric in a way of saying like, is it at a certain level or a certain category? But it can also be part of a process metric in that the higher I can get that, the better. And so I can look at that and see, am I improving that towards getting more fit? So that's more of one of those kind of hybrid, but often people use it as more of a goal metric. I want to get 5 points higher on my VO2 max or whatever. And until they've achieved that, they're not satisfied.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really the difference, is when we're using them in that way to track progress over time, they can be incredibly helpful. But when we just kind of get seized on this specific mindset, like I have to be here right now.
Right.
And then we pull in anxiety, or we pull in shame, or we pull in whatever.
Or the failure mentality. I failed again. I'm not there yet.
Or that all or nothing thinking, right?
Yeah.
I needed to hit this. I didn't hit that in the time. So like, I might as well give up.
Right.
That's when it becomes detrimental, because it's more likely to get us off track.
Yeah.
Because as we've talked about before, what matters over the long term is consistency. Can I do this again and again on repeat without getting burnt out, injured, et cetera? And
Yeah.
sometimes that burnout is or injury is physical. Sometimes it's mental, right? I'm so sapped from not meeting this, right? From beating myself up that I get off track.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then if we're having that negative thought loop, if we're trapped in that negative thought loop because we're not achieving those goal metrics, then that's a big problem. Whereas if we can focus on the process metrics, again, some of those things are like your resting metabolic rate, making sure that that stays in a healthy range and assessing that every so often to make sure that the things that I'm doing is leading toward the end goal. And so keeping that high. My absolute favorite process metric is your heart rate zones.
Yeah.
Being able to make sure that you have good heart rate zones. So doing a VO2 test and getting accurate quality heart rate zones based on your body's physiology is so critical. And then you can use those heart rate zones as the metric for helping you make progress to make sure you're training in the right way for your body right now. So getting an accurate zone 2, getting an accurate zone 4 and 5, so you know how easy to take it on your average day and how hard to push it on your hard days so that you really can make progress over time.
Yeah.
And that's critical. And so getting those right process metrics from the cardio coach and getting that information updated every so often is a really helpful part of staying on track and following the process so that we can achieve both the short-term and long-term goals. So those process metrics are those things that we track and follow that help keep us on track. So, those are some of the exercise things, but there's also other kind of consistency metrics that we like to follow that help keep us on track. So like heart rate variability can be really helpful to make sure as a way of testing whether or not we're getting adequate sleep, adequate recovery, things like that. Tracking sleep health is a really good process metric. Tracking how many social activities we do or things like that for stress management and stuff. Tracking some of those other aspects of our health and wellness are so important as well.
Daily journaling would be a great one for stress management, or having a meditative practice. That's helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's something that I can see, am I being consistent over time? And then I can look at trends.
Yeah.
I think that's where when we're checking in with kind of some of those goal metrics, they're not great for the day-to-day. It's more like, hey, let's do a weekly or monthly or quarterly check-in and say, how am I doing in this area?
Yeah.
And where is there room for improvement? And so, yeah, it's not just the fitness metrics that we tend to look at. It's, again, looking back at the lifestyle from this 30,000 foot view and like, am I trending in the right direction so that I'm not just sacrificing improvement or performance in one area for improvement in another, right? It's like, oh man, I hit a PR, but my mental health is crap, or I'm not sleeping well, or I've not spent any time with friends or family in months because I'm so focused on this thing.
Right.
If we want to stay balanced over the long term, again, certainly there's short-term sprints, if you will, where we're focused on a particular thing, but trying to be as balanced as possible in kind of all of those general lifestyle domains is going to help us stay on track over the long term.
Yeah. And so those short-term sprints, as long as they're part of the long-term plan, are totally fine. And as long as we're not pushing so hard in those that it's disrupting the long-term plan, that we're not leading to an injury or illness or fatigue or burnout that's going to disrupt the long-term plan, then I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But if we're feeling those things, injury, illness, fatigue, burnout, if we're feeling those things, we need to step back and say, how does this fit into the 30,000 foot view?
Yeah.
How does this fit into that 30-year plan? And so one of the things we always say is focus on moments, not metrics. And so we do like those process metrics because they help lead to the moments, but focus on moments in your life and lifestyle where it's like, I can do something that I wasn't able to do before, or I'm having an amazing experience. I just summited a mountain, or I just was able to roll around on the floor with my grandkids, whatever those moments are in your life, that it's like, this is me arriving. This is me having those moments that I enjoy, that are fulfilling, rewarding. And again, journaling or finding some way to take note of that, capture that moment, whether that's a social media post or whatever, but revel in those moments more than the metrics. Really does help. And so that's why I like to focus on the process metrics, because the process metrics help us stay consistent, because they help us focus on what are the daily actions I need to be doing that lead to the healthy habits and practices that lead to the skills that I want to develop, and then the goal. But often if we just focus on the goal, we don't break it down into what do I need to do to attain the goal. And we just try harder to do the same thing we've always done, instead of break it down into, okay, what are the skills that I need to develop to be able to get there? And then what are the practices that help me develop those skills? And so breaking that down by focusing on, okay, what are those process metrics? I just think that's a much better way of focusing on how do I get to those moments, and in reflecting on those moments that matter in my life, then I'll realize that I've arrived at my goal more than anything else. If you take second place, you still had an amazing journey of getting there, even though you didn't maybe take first or whatever. Enjoy the moments that help you not only enjoy it in the now, but also that can fuel the fire for the next time too.
Absolutely. So like in that example, it's like, okay, I didn't podium this time, or I didn't get first. Like, there is the future. When we're looking at that long-term plan and training over the long term, then we can take a step back and be like, oh, it's okay. Like, this is just something to iterate on, right? I get to try this again.
I still achieve this amazing thing.
Yeah.
And now I can use that as fuel to say, I know the process now.
Yeah.
And if I stick with it, I can get first.
Absolutely.
I can do better.
And it's like, oh, you know what? This is a skill that I was lacking in.
Yeah.
And so what do I need to improve that? This is a mindset that I need to develop, right? I realized that really it was my mindset that maybe I didn't perform as well as I wanted. And so the process metrics are really great ways to help us stay on track and make course corrections. Because, it's like, okay, well, I haven't been staying in my heart rate ranges. You know what? I am getting terrible amounts of sleep. You know what? I haven't been fueling myself well. You know what? When I look at my calendar, I'm skipping workouts all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so it gives us a chance to reorient and say, okay, what is working well? What can I continue doing? And given my life and lifestyle and the demands on my time and attention, what do I need to tweak to become more successful?
Yeah.
And then we track that again. And so it's just this loop of looking at what's working well, looking at what's not working, making some changes, implementing that, seeing what happens, and then doing that process again and again and again.
So I love that zoom in, zoom out analogy. Whenever something's not working, let's zoom out and go, okay, why is it not working? Or what seems to be off? Zooming out is a great time to reassess some of the goal metrics, as well as some of get updated numbers on the process metrics. So whenever something's not working for somebody, I like to zoom out and say, okay, let's do another VO2 test. Let's do some more, strength testing and blah, blah, blah. Let's see where the problems are at. And so let's redefine where your heart rate zones are. Let's take a look at where your metabolic rate is. Let's take a look at your overall fitness. How are things improving? Are we off somewhere? And often in that process, we can identify what are some of the areas in which we're lacking. Relooking at sleep health and tracking those trends. That's one of the reasons why I love smartwatches and things, is it allows me to have that data when I need it to troubleshoot, but then we can kind of zoom back into what are the process steps that I need to be taking. But so, yeah, it's a good time to zoom out, get refresh numbers, and then zoom back into, okay, let's just do the steps and iterate and succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the difficulties, again, going back to this, is we get too focused on I need to be here now.
Yeah.
And I like to use the analogy of a child learning to walk. If it's 11 months and your child isn't walking yet, you're like, hey, you stupid kid, you better get up, stop falling down, right?
Yeah.
You just need to know how to walk. This is the time period that you're supposed to be walking. And so this needs to happen now, right? We don't do that to our kids. We give them encouragement. We let them keep trying. And as they continue to practice that skill, they eventually get better, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I've fallen a bunch of times. I ran into furniture, right? I got farther and then I tripped over something, you know. But they learn over time, and then eventually they get to that goal, right? Like the
Yeah.
goal is walking,
They figure it out.
and we're not yelling at them, we're not criticizing them, and yet we do that to ourselves so often, right?
All
Oh,
the time.
you were like, why didn't you do that? And why can't you be better at this? And just relaxing a little bit and being able to broaden that over a longer time span.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the next point with the caveat, and I'm going to say this a lot, is when we're talking about training for health and longevity, a lot of the noise out there is from people with different goals and different timelines.
Yeah.
And so if I'm training for, I just only care about aesthetics, I'm not caring about long term, there's certain things that I might do that will select for the aesthetics, but may not be long term healthy, right? So
Right.
like anabolic steroid use, right? We know that there's long term risks with that, but you get on those, like you can get some pretty big achievements in terms of muscle size and body recomp and stuff. And so it's understanding like what is the long term goal,
Right.
and then letting your training match that. And so the type of training that you're going to do for certain different end goals is going to be different. But when we're talking about training for longevity, we're really looking at a balance of our different exercise types, right? That we're getting in aerobic exercise, we're getting in strength, speed, power exercise, we're getting in resistance training, so that we're really again taking this holistic approach, this 30,000-foot view, and making sure that as a whole organism we're strong and capable and robust and resilient.
Right. Having a good training balance really is important. No matter what your goal is, having a balance between cardiovascular health and strength training, as well as the other activities that we enjoy doing that keep us motivated. I think it's important to have some kind of activity-based goal as part of our fitness routine, so that it's like I'm training with my strength training and my cardiovascular training for X, whatever the goal is, right? So if it's rock climbing, or if it's marathoning or triathlon, or if it's I like to play pickleball or badminton or bowling or whatever it is. It's like, how do I become the best athlete for that? Even if it's not necessarily an athletic thing, how do I become the best at being able to do that thing long term without injury, be able to enjoy it, and not have my body be the thing keeping me from fully participating? To me, that's the best measure of health that we have, is if you can answer the question, if somebody asks you to do an activity that you would want to do, and your first thought or response is, yeah, let's do it, or yeah, let me go grab my shoes, or yeah, let's train for that. It may be a bigger goal, but it's like, yeah, let's train for that. If that's your first thought, then you're probably healthy. If your first thought is, I don't know if my knees or my back or my shoulder or I don't know if I feel comfortable in a swimsuit, or, if there's some kind of first thought that isn't like, yeah, let's do it, then we probably aren't healthy. There probably is some kind of health concern, whether that's mental health, self-image, or a physical ailment. If our first thought is not, yeah, let's do it, that sounds great, then we probably have some work to do in terms of our physical or mental wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, that actually ends up being great feedback, because it lets us know, hey, what are some of the areas that I need to focus on and improve, right?
Yeah.
Do I need to go, do I need to get more cardio in it? So like I have a friend that loves traveling. He's been to like Thailand and areas in South America. I can't remember any of the places he's been all of a sudden. But like that depending on the climate that he's in, depending on the activities, like sometimes it's a lot of like mountainous regions, right? Like he's up in the Andes at one point. Cool. Other times it's just straight endurance. And so having that range of just for the really steep stuff, right? That power, being able to handle intensity, but then also being able to handle that over the long term. Like if he's not strong enough, if he's not aerobically trained enough, he's going to really struggle on those things. And so, what's the area that I'm perhaps weakest in, and then what's the lowest hanging fruit?
Mm-hmm.
Again, when we're training for health and longevity, we realize that we have a longer time to work towards the goals, right? We don't have to be, at max strength and at max aerobic efficiency and at,
Right.
max mental health right now. There's time to develop these skills.
Yeah.
And so doing that in kind of a reasoned and measured way and saying like, for this season, what is the focus going to be? Because again, in this world where we're all, I want to live longer and, I got to try this hack and this hack, it can be really overwhelming.
Oh yeah, there's so many little, if you only do this for 15 minutes a day, like you've got 3.5 days worth of just 15 minutes a day tips, right?
Just pack into one day, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that can be very overwhelming. And so often it's just, people end up going that all or nothing. Like, it's like, I just don't have time. Like, I guess that's not for me, right?
Yeah.
I guess this goal isn't for me. I guess feeling good over the long term isn't for me. And so how can we make this simpler? How can we look at some of the low hanging fruit and then be able to still move in the right direction, but give ourselves some breathing room to improve?
Yeah.
What would you say are kind of the like the easiest things that we can do to incorporate more of exercise, more of some of these practices in without feeling completely overwhelming?
Yeah, to me, the thing is start where you're at. Don't start at the goal. Like, I want to be able to run, 30 miles a week so that I can train for X race. So you go out and you start running 30 miles a week. That's the recipe for disaster. That's the recipe for an injury. Instead, start with what are the processes that are going to lead toward that goal. And so, I need to start running more, obviously, but running at the volume that I want to start running at, I should build up to that. So it's seeing where we are currently at and building up to that. One of the reasons why I love the O2 testing, getting a really quality test to find out where the heart rate zones are and things like that, is it gives me better information as to where that patient is. In terms of creating that plan for them. I can see what they've been doing for their training. So I call it kind of my crystal ball of I can see their past, present, and future. And I can see, okay, how have they been training and where are they currently at, so that we can design the right program for them. Because if they don't have a big or aerobic base, if they don't have a big zone 2, if they don't have, some of these things in place, then I know we've got to start slower than somebody that's been running for years. I love to look at their Strava or however they track their running. I like to look at that and say, like, how big of a base have they built up? How long have they been training? And so it's finding out, like, what's the next step that I'm ready for, instead of like, here's what I want to be able to do. And I found this training plan that, whoever uses, and I love them. They're my favorite runner or triathlete or whatever. So I'm going to train the way they train.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how you get an injury, is because you're starting at a place that they earned and you haven't. And so the idea is, what's my best next step to make progress, instead of where do I want to be, and starting where I want to be. I see that all the time, in self-improvement and things like that. People always want to know, like, what did Jeff Bezos do? What did so-and-so do? And what did, what are the books they read? What are the things they did? And it's like, yeah, but he probably didn't do that early in his career.
Yeah.
Like, he started reading books later on when he got to the big, like, once he, was grinding for years and built his company and, did all this stuff. And then when he had the headspace and his job was CEO and not president, right? It wasn't the day-to-day operations. It was CEO. It was the big picture type stuff. Then he started reading books, and then he started, my guess is that they didn't start reading. He reads 8 books a week, and I've just seen all these things, and it's like, yeah, he probably didn't start there. That was probably something he built up, where he started reading 1 book a month or 1 book every 6 months, and then as he got more into making that a habit, got to where he's consuming books, and as he got more headspace and was again responsible for the broader overall vision of the company, that's when he started diving into those things more. And so, just as an example, but we often try to start where we'd like to be instead of where we're at and building that up.
Well, to that point too, we sometimes even use our former self as that ruler, right?
Yeah,
So,
I used to. Yeah,
exactly. And so that's one of the areas that I see issues in too,
Yeah.
is right, especially because it happened to us, right? We intuitively understand, well, I could do this. And so we go out with that same mindset, except like we haven't earned the right, or we've lost the right to be at that level because we haven't kept up consistency.
Yeah.
And so then we learn an untruthful lesson, right? Is that, I tried getting into running, or I tried getting into lifting, and I did it at that level that was a former capacity, even though my capacity is now here, and I got injured. And so the lesson I learned is, I guess I just shouldn't do those things.
Yeah.
I guess running isn't for me.
Right.
I guess strength training isn't for me. I guess this activity isn't for me. Or they get told by someone, oh, your knees hurt, like you better stop running.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Oh, weightlifting, I tweaked my back. I just shouldn't deadlift anymore. I shouldn't, whatever the lift is. Oh, I hurt my shoulder doing that. So it's like, yeah, but were you trying to, go back to your high school bench weight or whatever, you were trying to bench 225 when you haven't benched over 200, or haven't benched your body weight in, a decade. You haven't earned the right to bench 225. And so build back up, build your capacity back up to do that, and it'll be fine. It'll be safe and healthy, and it's not bad for your back, and it's not like, those things aren't dangerous if you earn the right to be able to do them safely.
Absolutely. And it just often we need to start so much. Well, we need to start where we're at, right?
Yeah.
And so if I want to get into running, like maybe I just start with walking. Maybe I do some cross training, on the cycle to build up my aerobic capacity, and just stair step my way into that thing. Or lifting weights, right? Maybe I just focus on being able to move the weights with good form, control that, learn those patterns, and then I start adding the intensity.
Right. So I've had this debate with people a lot, because I often tell people, lift in a way that you won't be sore at first. Eventually, like, soreness is part of lifting, and that's totally fine. But at first, while you're building the habit, don't get sore. Like, try to avoid getting sore. So lift light enough and whatever that you can avoid soreness. And people are like, yeah, but you're leaving a lot of gains on the table. You're not progressing as fast as you could. It's like, yep. And I'm avoiding injury. I'm allowing their body to adapt. I'm allowing their schedule and their lifestyle and their sleep habits and all the other things to adapt. And for them to not get discouraged by the fact that they're sore and uncomfortable all the time and just give up on the whole thing. And so I'd rather progress be slower, but more steady, and people be able to be consistent because they have that training balance. If cardio is too hard and you hate it, it's probably because you're pushing too hard. Go lighter to where it's not too hard, and slowly build that up. And again, if we're talking 30,000 foot view, if we're talking, the 30-year plan, it doesn't matter if it takes me 5 years to get there, because I'll be able to be there and stay there for the rest of that 30 years versus going gung-ho. What's going to be the thing that gets me to my results as fast as possible? Where should I be? I should be doing this much zone 2, and I should be doing this much zone 5, and this much strength training, and I should have a 2-minute dead hang, and all these metrics that we should be doing. And the problem is we're not there yet. And what it would take to be there may be iteration over a couple of years to get there. And that's okay if the process takes a couple of years, because we're healthier along that journey. We're making improvements. We're changing our lifestyle through that journey. It's okay if that process of iteration and building those habits takes a few years. And so getting the right numbers throughout the way, making sure we're doing the right process throughout the way. That's the more important focus of making sure we have balanced training and the right metrics. That's kind of what we've talked about so far. Doing those things, that's going to be more important in the long-term big picture view than any one tactic that helps me get there faster. The get there faster mentality usually burns us out, usually sabotages us because we get injured, fatigued, or burnout.
Yeah. Well, I think a great way to look at it is what is my trajectory, right? What direction am I headed in? And one of the difficulties that I think we face is that we don't get to see inside our body and what adaptations are happening underneath the surface before we see things like big changes.
Yeah.
Like some of those goal metrics. And so kind of a thought experiment that I like to look at sometimes is like, let's say that I'm relatively unhealthy and unfit, but I start doing those things, right? I improve my sleep. I'm getting some amount of cardio in. I'm getting in some sort of strength training, right? I'm working on improving my diet. I'm adopting and I'm developing the habits of a fit and healthy person. And so over time, that's where my trajectory is going to be. That's the direction that I'm headed in, even if you can't see me right now. Let's take someone on the other end of that spectrum, someone that's relatively fit and healthy, but they're now slipping on the sleep habits. They've stopped exercising. Their, eating nutrition isn't great. Like their trajectory is towards a fit and unhealthy person, even while they look fit and healthy. And so over time, what we're going to see is that effective compounding, whereas that formerly unfit and unhealthy person is going to become more and more fit over time. And that really fit and healthy person, if they're not adopting, keeping those habits, is going to get less healthy over time. And eventually those will cross over. But sometimes we don't see that crossover for years or decades.
Well, and when they pass that crossover point, they still may not look, the one person still may look more fit than the other person or things like that. But they're trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And so then we see, like, in later life, the people that are still getting to the top of the mountain, the people that are skiing, the people that are staying active with their grandkids are the ones who've kept those habits alive. And I think the more that I have worked with my own habits, the more that I've worked with clients, is just this idea of how much our environment and how much our habits matter.
Yeah.
That when life gets crazy and things get stressful, we tend to fall back on the framework of what is that environment supporting, and what are our habits. And so making those small and simple changes to our environment, to our habits, to include those health and fit and fit activities, are really going to benefit us over the long term. It's having that structure that we're moving in the right direction, but then also enough flexibility to allow a life to occur exactly as it does and be able to be adaptable to that.
Yeah. And so again, when we look at that 30,000 foot view, when we zoom out and say, okay, what are the elements that I need? One of the most important things that we can do for longevity is make sure that we have that balanced training and everything, but that we polarize that training as well. That we have base building days, whether that's our strength or our cardiovascular fitness. That we have days where we're just kind of going through the motions, building a base and doing the routine. Then we have days where we push it really hard. So that 80-20 principle is what I like to follow. What I think science has shown makes the most consistent improvement, not necessarily fastest, most consistent improvement while avoiding injury. And so that 80-20 principle, 80% being slow, steady, just the routine, and then 20% of let's push it. And that's where we make our progress. And so the idea is we're going to make more progress there when we do those types of things, when we polarize our training. And it actually is what helps keep us on track and has that consistency that Marc was talking about. The more we polarize our training, the more our easy is easy. And that's relative. Like a marathoner who's running a 2:30 marathon, their easy pace is going to be faster than somebody that runs a 4-hour marathon's fast pace.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's fine. And it's just differences in where somebody's at in their training, but being able to break that down again, get that testing done, find out where your zones are, find out where you're at, and dial that in so that you know that you're polarizing appropriately, but polarizing our training to make sure that we're doing enough in terms of just keeping ourselves fit and healthy, putting enough load on the system that it knows that it needs to maintain it. That's what the 80 is. And then the 20% is saying, I'm going to put a overload on the system that tells it, I need you to get more fit. And then as we get more fit, our 80% bumps up a little bit in how intense we can handle it and still have it be in that zone 2, in that, kind of 80% volume. And so that's essentially how we get more fit over time. And so make sure that you're polarizing your training appropriately, that you're going light enough on your light days and hard enough on your hard days to actually see that progress.
Yeah. And I just want to zone in on what you said, zone in, of like, what is the goal? Again, the goal here that we're talking about when we're training for health and longevity is, how do I keep this up for years without burnout, injury, and fatigue?
Yeah.
And so again, what Cameron said is, this might not allow me to improve the fastest, right? There are other training regimes that can lead to improvement faster, but what's going to keep me in the game over the long term? So the nice thing is that our bodies remain highly adaptable across our lifespan. Like, it's so cool. We can become healthier at any age. I remember I told you about this guy that I met. He was in his 70s. I went to a ninja gym with one of my friends, and he said he'd started like 4 or 5 years before. And I was watching him just do all the obstacles and just crush it. Like, I hope I'm doing that when I'm 70. Like, this guy's a boss. And I was just talking with him a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I actually only started this a few years ago. And at first, like, I was just so sore every day, and I could not do any of the obstacles. But I just kept showing up, day after day, week after week, till he was at level that he was doing some awesome things. And so, like, he hadn't been as healthy in his late 60s, wanted to get healthier, and started doing that, and had made this improvement. And so I do want to focus on the idea that we are highly adaptable, but it does take a little bit more to recover. Just, over time, like, there are consequences of age. Most of the consequences of age have to do with our level of activity. But there is some more recovery needed. We tend to get more soft tissue injuries as we age. And so respecting that, when we're young and a little bit more resilient, right, and some of our hormones are really in force, it's just easier to recover from kind of crazy intensities. And so, like, that might work even for like several years to kind of do things at that top end, keep the intensity really high. But over time, it's just more likely to lead to, again, injury, burnout, and fatigue. And so what we're not saying is that, like, if your goal is to increase performance the fastest, this is the only way to do it. But if we want to stay in the game, and we're looking at probabilities, and when we're talking about health and longevity, it's a game of probabilities, not for certain, right? Like, I could do all these healthy things and get hit by a bus, and it's like, well, I didn't get the longevity gain hack, right?
Get cancer,
right?
All kinds of other ailments. Yeah.
So many things can happen, but there's a higher probability that we're going to live longer with less disease and less injury if we train kind of this polarized fashion, where we're having that big base, and then we're still focusing on some of those top end, bumping up our capacity things. And so, yeah, it's like, you might still do all these things and get injured or have an illness or whatever, but you're just much less likely to do that, and to live healthier, to live better longer, if we train in this way that pushes our body, but also allows it sufficient time to recover and to adapt.
Well, yeah, the principle that I love to talk about is this idea of living to play another day.
Yeah.
Right? That you do enough to keep the machine tuned up and functioning properly, but you also back off at that point where it's like, this is gonna frustrate the greater plan. And so let's live to play another day. If I can avoid injury, burnout, fatigue, those are the 3 principles that I always come back to, of like, those are the major derailers of a fit and healthy lifestyle. people feeling burnout. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Like, I've been trying to work on my fitness for 30 years, and what I've been doing just isn't working anymore, and I'm just so burnt out. Am I really going to have to do this for the rest of my life? And it's like, yes, you get to do this. And it's a mindset shift, and it's taking some of the pressure off, and it's getting the right numbers. That's honestly when they see what it actually takes by getting a VO2 test done and finding out where they really should be eating in terms of calories with their resting metabolic test,
Mm-hmm.
and where they really should be training in terms of heart rate zones and intensity levels and stuff. It's like, oh, well, I can do that.
Yeah.
It makes it so much more attainable and sustainable. And so that's one of the things that I absolutely love, is being able to take some of the pressure off people and let them know, like, hey, you're in this for the long haul. Live to play another day. If it's burning you out, let's restructure. Let's take a different look at it and say, this isn't right for me in this season of life. That my training efforts are not supporting my broader goal of what I want to accomplish. And so it's frustrating that instead. And it's not helping me be who I want to be. And so those things derail the whole plan. And so instead, let's focus on what helps keep me going and keep me feeling well, having those moments that I can be like, oh yeah, I am achieving that. And I don't have to necessarily crush every single workout. Instead, I can look back and say, look at how many workouts I've chained together. And that's where progress happens. No one workout can we be intense enough to actually get progress in one workout. Instead, it's more about being consistent with our workouts to where we see those changes happen over time. And so if the intensity of one workout, of pushing for that one more rep or that one more whatever, leads to an injury that then takes me out for 6 weeks, that then decreases my fitness, and I get frustrated, and then I kind of, with that all or nothing mentality, bail on the whole thing, I'm much less healthy than if I hadn't done that one more rep and maybe missed out on a little bit of progress, but you're talking minuscule in the long-term scheme of things, and said, you know what, I'm going to skip that one last rep, and I'm going to hit it again tomorrow, and we're going to push again tomorrow and make progress over time. And I stick with it for 30, 40, 50 years, and I'm 85 still tossing the luggage up in the overhead bin like it's no big deal, and going and enjoying my life and lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want the stimulus of the workout, but then we want to be able to recover from that.
Yeah.
And balancing that in appropriate ways in such a way that it keeps us in the game.
In the game.
And I get that. Like, I've been there of like, oh, I gotta just push out one more rep, right?
Yeah.
But I've also been there where it's like, oh, now my shoulder's hurting. Now this is bothering me, and I'm less consistent over time. And so again, really, it's that mindset, it's that approach that we're in this for the long haul. And so I want to do things that are going to keep me in the game over the long term.
Yeah.
And I heard from someone once that if we want to become, we're trying to become this new version of ourselves, then we typically need to level up our skill sets, our mindsets, and our networks.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that looks like, as we've talked about, is, okay, I'm gonna improve the skill set, right? I'm going to learn how to train. I'm going to train consistently in such a way that I improve there. Mindset, right? Like sometimes that is, I need to do a meditative practice, or I need to journal on this, or, I need to develop some of these stress management tools, or I need to really look at like, oh, okay, I've really been short-term focused. How do I zoom out and look at the long-term plan? And then that idea of networks, if you're someone looking to get fitter, like, go and get this VO2 testing done, right? It gives us those individual values and allows us to make personalized exercise recommendations for you. If you're a clinician, like, this is a way of really helping your clients out and giving them great information. And you can also work with other providers, right? Hey, like, maybe they need some personal coaching. Maybe they need to be referred to a therapist. Maybe they need this person in their network to help them become the best version of themselves. And so, again, really zooming out and giving the big picture and saying, what skill sets, what mindsets, what networks do I need to develop so that I can move to the next level and stay in this game for decades.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea, is let's do this for decades and not just a flash in the pan. Like, I'm going to make this big push to get fit for a short-term goal and then not really stick with it. So if we can help people be able to do that, the more we're really helping people live and stay healthy.
Yeah.
So it's all about just developing those little habits and those little steps along the way. Again, getting and taking those steps. It's fueling those steps by good data.
Yeah.
And good information, and making sure that they can achieve that. And again, I will say this over and over and over again. This is why I love testing with a cardio coach, because it gives you the data that allows you to create the right plan for that person, for their body, for their metabolism, for where they're at in their training, and allows me to see what's the next step they need to take. And so I think in terms of ways that I test people, so I do some strength testing and things like that as well in the clinic to be able to see what exercises I want to prescribe and all of those things. I think the most helpful thing that I do in terms of overall plan and programming is to do that VO2 test. It tells me where they're at in so many ways with their strength training, with their body mass even. I can tell, do they have a lot of lean muscle tissue just by how many calories they burn. If they burn a fairly low amount of calories even at their highest intensity, that tells me right there that they don't have either very much muscle or their muscle's not working terribly efficiently. And so it just gives me so many metrics and data and information that allows me to see the big picture of their cardiovascular health and overall fitness so that I can help create a good plan.
So I love that point, because that data can help us make better decisions.
Yeah.
Again, there is so much information in this health and longevity space of like, do this and try this hack and, all these things.
Medications
and modalities and all these things.
Yep.
And the vast majority of them, if they work, it's just little tweaks.
Well, we use the pyramid analogy.
Yeah.
It's the very top of the pyramid stuff, red light therapy or whatever it is. Like, we're talking top of the pyramid stuff instead of base stuff.
Absolutely.
And the information you get with a cardio coach is base stuff. Like, this is movement, diet, all the things that really matter the most in making changes.
Well, and that's what carries the freight of our health.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about the kind of exercise guidelines, like not a lot of people do them to their max. But again, this is simple in theory. It can be more complicated in execution. And so I don't want to downplay like that it can be difficult to make some of these changes.
Oh, for sure.
But some of the simple changes, like if we were to like make those improvements to our sleep and get quality and quantity of sleep, if we were to increase our activity, get more steps in the day, get in regular strength training, get in regular exercise, our diet, we're getting more protein, we're getting enough vitamins and minerals, we're being aware of our calories, and then having, healthy stress coping mechanisms. If we could improve in just those few areas, that would markedly make, like, that would lead to such a huge improvement in just individual health, but population health as well. Without all of the, there's just a lot of snake oil out there.
Yeah.
And so without all these hacks, without all of these supplements, all these modalities, focusing on the basics, it's just not sexy, right? And it's not always something that you can directly sell.
Right.
And so I think just focusing on those basic metrics, getting good data in those basic metrics, so that you can make better decisions and say, am I on track, right? Is my training, is what I'm doing, are these skills that I'm developing moving me towards my goals?
Right.
And then taking that time to regularly retest, reorient, and tweak the plan if needed to keep moving in the direction towards that long-term health, long-term wellness, long-term function.
Yeah. Well, and to make those, just building those daily healthy habits that are the most important thing that we can absolutely do, even more unsexy, and you don't have to accomplish it today. Right? Like if it takes you 2, 3, 4 years, a decade to get where you'd like to be with your fitness, with your health, with your sleep health, with your diet, with your, if it takes years to get there where you want to be, that's okay too. As long as you're iterating and changing and working on the process of developing healthier habits, that's okay. Because you'll eventually get there as long as you stick with the process. But if we overreach and burn out and take backward steps or just give up on it altogether, then we're definitely not going to get there.
Yeah.
And so, it's not a sexy message to say, hey, create a 5-year plan for this, take it a step at a time and make it easy for you. Make it so that you're confident in taking each step along the way. Like, that's not very sexy, but it works.
It works.
And it's much more doable, much more consistent and achievable than being like, oh, I need to lose 20 pounds in the next 30 days because I've got a cruise coming up that I'd like to be fit for.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna keep you healthy in the long run.
Well, and with that foundation, then we can add in some of those tools that are maybe on higher levels of the pyramid to help us be more consistent in those basic routines, right?
Right. And they actually have more power.
Mm-hmm.
Those top of the pyramid things have much more power in improving our health and wellness if the base things are being done.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll just give a quick example of this. We talked about this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned the GLP-1s as glasses to help you see more clearly, right?
Mm-hmm.
The focus is still, I want to build and develop myself in these long-term behaviors, right? I really want to develop healthy lifestyle habits.
Yeah.
But wearing these glasses is helping me to establish these habits in a better way. And so because that's my focus, I want to be long-term healthy. Yeah. Now I'm pulling in this tool to assist me with that and to help me where I might have failed before. And so just it's really, what's that focus, what's that long-term goal, and then pulling in outside tools to help us to be more effective in that goal, but not sacrificing those foundational things to chase
all the tools.
All the tools, right?
Right. Yeah. If you're taking a GLP-1, but still your diet consists of like Twinkies and Doritos and whatever, and you're not eating healthy, real foods, it's not really going to have the same effect in terms of helping you in the long run. You may lose weight and things like that, but you're still going to be undernourished and underfed and low energy and not participating in exercise. And so there's still going to be enough negative health consequences from the other behaviors that it's not going to help you as much as if you use that as a tool as part of the overall plan that you are still iterating on your diet and iterating on your activity levels and getting to where you are fit, healthy, active.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so we can obviously we are on our soapbox. Love this topic because so much out there makes us feel like we have to be there now, feel like we have to push when really it's a long-term game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other difficult thing is it just makes it feel so unattainable sometimes, right? Yeah. Like I have to shell out this much money to be healthy, right? Yeah. It's like put on a pair of shoes and get out and start walking, right? Like we can start with where we're at and we can pull in some of those tools, but like those basic things are fairly simple to start implementing in our lifestyle. We don't have to do a complete overhaul. It's just, can I start developing those small, simple, healthy habits, develop those skills so that I'm moving in the direction of my goals.
Yep. So there it is.
There it is. Training for health and longevity. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, remember to like, follow, and subscribe for more content like this, and we'll catch you next time. This podcast is a production of Core Medical Technologies. Ready to take your metabolic testing to the next level? Visit core.com to learn more about purchasing our metabolic test equipment.